Today I'm reviewing something very different. A carbon fiber driver shaft from Steadfast Golf. Let's get started. Hey golfers, Dave from Fit2U Golf. As I said in the intro, I'm reviewing a very different product. This is a driver shaft made from carbon fiber. It's advertised to be the most accurate shaft in the business. It's marketed as a premium shaft. It has a very low torque rating, and it comes from Steadfast Golf right here in the USA. I first learned about the shaft when I watched a review that TXG did, where Matt and Ian tested two versions of this shaft, the X-Flex, which is clearly not for me, and the R-Flex. That got me kind of interested and curious about what made this shaft different. Did as much research as I could before this review. I obviously went to the manufacturer's website, also went to the forums to see what some of the reviews were saying there, and some interesting things about some possible flaws with the tip prepping or the epoxy. Some heads were flying off, adapters were coming loose. I can tell you that I didn't have any of those issues with this particular shaft. It spec'd just right. I did a little extra tip prepping and used 24 epoxy to make sure I didn't encounter any of those issues. And I've hit hundreds of shots with this, and it's been very stable. Now that aside, let me tell you about the shaft. So as I said, it's made from carbon fiber, and you can tell right away by looking at it. I'll put some pictures up, and hopefully you can see the kind of variations in the material that look very different than a graphite shaft would. Another difference with this shaft is when I went to flow it, I could not find a stable plane. Now, before you jump to conclusions and think, that means it's not a good shaft, we're back to the graphite of the 90s, it's terrible. I think the way that this is constructed is obviously different than laminated graphite, where you're going to find a spine, for lack of a better word, or a stable plane. But I guess in the way that this carbon fiber shaft is made, that doesn't exist. The other thing I'll say is that I'm becoming less and less convinced that as club makers we should be wasting our time and customers' money on things like spine aligning, flowing, and puring. And a lot of what's led me to that conclusion is an experiment that another YouTube club maker did, the Mobile Club Maker. I'll put his channel name right below me here, and then I'll try to put the link in the description. But he basically set up an experiment that demonstrated that all shafts, regardless of their orientation, ability to flow, pure, in 1 CPM, bounce straight back. And so you can check that out if you want. I know I'm getting a little deep in the weeds here, but it is a unique feature to this particular shaft. Now, based on the manufacturer's recommendations of swing speed, I went with the R-Flex. Now, the range is quite large. 80 miles an hour to 99 miles an hour is R-Flex. Now, to me, that's two flexes. That covers senior and regular, and the upper end of regular. Nonetheless, that's the one I bought, and as you'll see later on, I think probably I should have gone with a stiff. I'll explain that in a minute. Its advertised weight is 64 grams. Mine was 65, so that was excellent. I paired this with my Maltby KE4 Tour TC driver head, and initially I paired it at my playing weight of 204 grams. I think that led to some dispersion problems, which I'll get into in just a second. When I had it at that head weight, 45.5 inches, 60 gram grip, it was swing weighting at D2. When I later redid the head weight down to 200, it brought the swing weight down to D0, and that's the weight and the swing weight that I used for this test. So let me talk about the feel of the shaft and my initial impressions of it. As I said, I first went to the range, with a fairly heavy driver head, and I found that if I swung very easy, like when I was warming up, I was getting really nice tight dispersion. I would get a little baby draw or a little baby fade, but nothing crazy, and I was really impressed with that. But as I warmed up and I was swinging harder, I had trouble getting this face square. I suspected it was either lagging behind or deflecting too far forward and slamming shut, but I was getting kind of shots all over the place. And I thought about that and came to a couple conclusions. One is, especially at this flex, 204 grams at that length is probably overwhelming it. And the other thing is, to be a pretty user-friendly review, not many driver heads these days are above 200 grams, and 200 grams is considered kind of on the heavy side. I mean, you look at the pings, they're, in that range, maybe a couple grams more, but most drivers are lighter. So in order to be more kind of broader appeal to the viewers, that's why I went down to that 200 gram head weight. So then that's what I carried forward for my test. I'm going to put up some swings where I talk through kind of the feel and what it was like for me on the range, but I'll also let you know that after that you're going to see two sets of data. I'm not so sure the data shows a whole lot when you're talking about a shaft. You might be interested in launch angle and spin, but even a lot of that is dictated by the head that you're using. But I did collect two sets of data based on that initial finding that I was getting tighter dispersion at a slower speed at this flex. So let's take you to the range where I talk you through some swings. All right, a little less of a push. The shaft is very, very flexible in the midsection. And one of the things that, I'm trying to show you how much it can deflect. And one of the things that Matt from THG liked about that was he said swinging at 95 miles an hour, which he referred to as chipping it out there, which I personally am offended by. He said that you can feel the shaft load. Now that's not to say this is the only shaft that you can feel load, but definitely something for a smooth tempo. There we go, that was better. Okay, let me try to get on a little bit and see what happens. Okay, big push slice there. When I was swinging slowly, about the only way that I could get the ball to draw was to really consciously think about releasing my hands. Let me give that a try here. That was a little better, but still fading. Oh. Now that one went fairly straight, a little bit of a fade, but I'm having trouble drawing it. That's not a bad thing. Definitely I was getting more dispersion with the heavier head weight. Let's try one more to see if I can draw it. Oh, still pretty straight though. Okay, so now for the data. Initially I tried to swing at 90 miles an hour or lower to get to that lower swing speed range of this regular flex shaft, and I was pretty successful at 90 miles an hour. I was getting ball speeds of 125, a smash factor of 1.4, carrying 196, launching at 16 degrees and spinning at 2700. When I stepped it up to be my regular swing speed, closer to that upper range, I was shooting for 99. I was able to get pretty close, swing on average at 98 miles an hour. I was getting ball speeds of 135. I know what you're thinking, Dave, you should be getting more out of that swing speed. I know, leave me alone, I'm working on it. Smash of 1.4, carrying 218, launching at 17 degrees, and spinning at 2600. Now I put those numbers up just so you can see that this is a good performing shaft. It didn't jump out in terms of having a particularly high or low launch angle or high or low spin. Those are typical for me across many different shafts. So I think you can see that this is a quality product and reasonably fit me if I swung very deliberately. I'm not going to give a rating just because the purpose of me doing this review is to just kind of add some information to a relatively new and innovative product, and hopefully it'll help others inform their decisions about trying it. But I will go over the pros and cons. I'll start with the pros. I didn't mention the price. This retails for $99. I got it on special for $79. It seems to me that Steadfast Golf offers that special quite often, so you're going to pay somewhere between $79 and $99 for that. That's not a bad price. It's a quality shaft. I think it's a pro that they market directly to the consumer and cutting out the middleman. And I think the innovative technology here is also a pro. I'm going to say that if you're swinging at 95 miles an hour or less, or maybe even low 90s and less with a smooth tempo, this is definitely worth checking out. Now, in terms of the cons, I've already referenced that swing speed range for R-Flex is quite broad. My guess is that they don't have, I don't remember seeing a senior flex on there, and perhaps that's the reason why they incorporate that into the R-Flex. Another con is it's really difficult to find information. There's a lot of written information on Steadfast's website, but for instance, I found 2 YouTube videos, and actually neither of them were really compelling in terms of wanting to purchase this product. So I'm hoping they put out more that have more detail. But I think that's a con. It's kind of hard to find information about it right now. And the other con I would say is we don't know how this technology will hold up, but it is interesting as a start. So particularly interested in hearing your thoughts. If you have questions about the shaft, especially if you've tried it or you've played it, I am interested in knowing what your experience was, what flex you played, and if you noticed that dispersion issue that I did if you're playing with a heavier driver head. So in the meantime, subscribe if you haven't. Check out my other videos. Keep playing golf, keep trying new stuff, and stay positive.